The story of the Melungeons' migration to the Appalachian Mountains is a poignant chapter in American history, shaped by resilience in the face of systemic discrimination. Originally found in colonial Virginia and the Carolinas during the 17th and early 18th centuries, the Melungeons' unique ancestry placed them outside the rigid racial classifications of the time. Often labeled as free people of color, they were subjected to legal and social restrictions that severely limited their opportunities. These circumstances set the stage for their eventual migration deeper into the remote terrains of Appalachia. Colonial America was not kind to those who didn't fit neatly into its binary racial hierarchy. By law, people of mixed-race ancestry could be denied voting rights, property ownership, and educational opportunities. For the Melungeons, these policies meant survival required a difficult choice: stay and endure or move somewhere beyond the reach of such harsh measures. Many opted for the latter, traveling westward into the mountains of Tennessee, Kentucky, and Virginia, seeking refuge in Appalachia's isolated hollows. This migration allowed the Melungeons to carve out their own existence, often settling in small, insular communities that clustered along the untamed frontiers of Appalachia. A key destination was Hancock County, Tennessee, where their descendants still live today. The mountains offered a sanctuary from immediate persecution, but came with challenges of their own: rugged terrain, limited fertile land, and isolation from broader society. Yet for the Melungeons, these hardships were preferable to the relentless discrimination they faced in the lowlands. Though Appalachia provided relative safety, it also enforced a cultural and social isolation that would define the Melungeons for generations. Their mixed ancestry and ambiguous origins sparked curiosity and suspicion among their neighbors, further solidifying their separation from broader society. This isolation fostered a sense of unity within Melungeon communities, a resilience born out of necessity. Over time, they found ways to adapt, blending elements of their European, African, and Native American heritages to create a distinctive Appalachian identity. According to folklore passed down through generations, the Melungeons were descendants of shipwrecked Portuguese or Spanish explorers who mingled with Native American populations. Some accounts even place their roots with the fabled lost colony of Roanoke, suggesting survival through intermarriage with local tribes like the Cherokee. These tales were often told in defiance of the racial classifications imposed by colonial authorities, offering Melungeon families an origin story that emphasized European ties, an identity that carried more privileges in a deeply segregated society. The earliest written references to the Melungeons date back to the early 19th century. A particularly notable mention comes from 1813 church records in southwestern Virginia, where a woman accused of harboring them faced social condemnation. By the 1840s, public discourse had begun to characterize them as a distinct, albeit mysterious racial group. Outsiders often viewed them with suspicion, their darker complexion sparking theories that ranged from African ancestry to the descendants of Ottoman Turks left behind from Spanish expeditions. The dominance of oral traditions added nuance, but also ambiguity, to narratives surrounding their origins. Through all these theories, one truth persists. The Melungeons were a multi-ethnic group of people whose ancestry reflects a kaleidoscope of the early American experience. Language was another marker of their distinctiveness. Though they adopted English out of necessity, some linguistic scholars noted unique patterns and pronunciations in older Melungeon communities, influenced by their diverse origins. Meanwhile, they often took on Anglo-American names in an effort to assimilate and avoid further ostracism. One of the Melungeons' most effective survival strategies was passing, blending into white society by downplaying their non-European heritage. Some families identified as Black Dutch or Black Irish, claiming distant European connections to escape persecution. Though controversial, this tactic allowed many Melungeon descendants to gain rights long denied to them. Their existence highlighted the failure of early American society to accommodate those who didn't fit its rigid definitions of race. The Melungeons, long shrouded in speculation and mystery, offer one of the most fascinating examples of genetic diversity in Appalachia. Recent DNA studies have finally helped to untangle the complexities of their heritage, revealing a remarkable blend of ancestries, each with its own story to tell. Far more than mere speculation, modern genetic testing has illuminated the intricate mosaic of European, African, Native American, and even Middle Eastern ancestry woven into the Melungeon identity. At the heart of their heritage lies a strong European foundation. Most Melungeon descendants show the majority of their DNA is European, derived predominantly from the British Isles. but also sprinkled with Portuguese, Spanish, and Mediterranean markers. Oral traditions calling them Portuguese or Spanish explorers now find echoes in these genetic traces, though not without contradictions. For instance, surnames like Collins, Gibson, and Mullins, common among Melungeon families, reflect this European influence and add an additional layer of connection to early colonial settlers. But European ancestry tells only part of the story. A portion of Melungeon genetic material also ties them to Africa. Researchers suggest this lineage dates back to the early 1600s, when free or escaped African men married white women in Virginia, forming bonds that defied the rigid racial norms of colonial America. Over time, these unions created a unique, multi-ethnic population, many of whom eventually migrated westward into Appalachia. That African heritage not only shaped their physical appearance, but also layered their narrative with the complex realities of race in early America. Native American ancestry further deepens this rich history. Genetic markers link the Melungeons to eastern woodlands, tribes like the Cherokee, Powhatan, or Catawba. These connections are among the strongest ties to their identity as an Appalachian people. Early intermarriage with Native Americans helped forge a unique cultural and genealogical footprint for the Melungeons, tying them closely to the land they called home, and contributing to the resilience that marked their history. Perhaps most intriguing is the presence of smaller Middle Eastern genetic markers in Melungeon DNA. Though once dismissed as myth, modern testing has uncovered traces that may stem from Sephardic Jews fleeing the Spanish Inquisition, or Turkish slaves brought to the Americas by early explorers. While these influences are far less pronounced, they bolster the long-held claim that Melungeons represent an extraordinary blending of genetic backgrounds. Thanks to advances in DNA technology, the Melungeons have evolved from mere subjects of folklore to a case study in the dynamic intermingling of cultures and peoples. Y DNA haplogroups, representing paternal ancestry, have played a key role in decoding their past. The most common haplogroup among Melungeon males is R1b, overwhelmingly associated with Western Europeans, especially from regions such as Britain, Ireland, Spain, and Portugal. This suggests strong ties to early European settlers. Additionally, the presence of E1b1a, a haplogroup linked to sub-Saharan Africa, indicates African ancestry, a testament to the intricate blending of cultural and racial identities during colonial times. Haplogroup I, found among Scandinavian and Germanic populations, further adds to the mosaic of their lineage, hinting at possible Northern European connections. On the maternal side, mtDNA studies have uncovered haplogroups that mirror their diverse paternal origins. Here also haplogroup H, Europe's most common maternal marker, is associated with the Neolithic expansion, suggesting deep European roots. Meanwhile, haplogroup U is shared by populations in both Europe and the Near East, possibly tracing back to ancient hunter-gatherers. These results illustrate a rich ancestry that spans continents and eras, reinforcing the uniqueness of their heritage. The implications of these genetic findings are profound. They not only dispel old myths about Melungeon origins, but also help unravel the lost tribe mystery that has shrouded their history for centuries. The predominance of European ancestry reshapes perceptions, revealing a legacy more aligned with early European settlers, while still celebrating the significant contributions of African and possibly Native American lineages. Beyond the scientific revelations, these genetic insights have cultural and social significance. Among these identities were terms like Black Dutch and Black Irish, labels that on the surface seemed innocuous but held a deeper, complex significance. The term Black Dutch emerged as a euphemism for mixed-race ancestry in the South, particularly during a time when racial classifications could dictate one's rights and social standing. For Melungeon families, identifying as Black Dutch allowed them to sidestep the harsh realities faced by those categorized as African American. This rebranding was often vital for accessing education, land ownership, and other opportunities that would have been denied under the racial hierarchies of the time. Similarly, Black Irish became another adopted identity, offering a more socially acceptable explanation for darker complexions, or features that set Melungeons apart from their neighbours of European descent. Beyond Black Dutch or Black Irish, some Melungeons claimed ancestry from groups like the Turks or the Romani. Aligning themselves with these distant or foreign origins provided an additional layer of deflection. These claims, whether rooted in truth or constructed for survival, further illustrate the lengths to which these families went to shield themselves from institutionalized oppression. This deliberate misidentification often meant walking a fine line, appearing different enough to justify their unique heritage, but not so different as to invite prejudice or exclusion. The legacy of these alternative identities is complex. Today, as we uncover more about the Melungeons' true origins through both history and science, terms like Black Dutch serve as reminders of the sacrifices and ingenuity required to survive in an unkind world. Among the most persistent theories was that these mysterious olive-skinned people descended from Portuguese explorers, Ottoman Turks, or Moors from North Africa. The Portuguese origin theory emerged in part due to the Melungeons' physical appearance, dark skin paired with strikingly light eyes. This, paired with oral traditions among Melungeon families, bolstered the belief that their ancestors were Portuguese sailors shipwrecked off the American coast. These explorers, the story goes, intermarried with Native Americans and free black populations, forming tightly knit communities in remote mountain areas. The theory gained credibility in later years as Melungeon families embraced and passed down this narrative. Some even declared themselves Portuguese. A second popular theory suggested the Melungeons were descended from enslaved Ottoman Turks, brought to the Americas by Spanish explorers. European slavery practices often extended beyond Africa, and Ottoman prisoners captured during Mediterranean skirmishes were known to have been sold into bondage. Some scholars latched onto reports from 18th century land surveyors in Appalachia, who described communities of bronze-skinned, light-eyed people and linked their prayers to Ottoman customs. Equally captivating was the suggestion that the Melungeons were Moors, North Africans who had once dominated Spain and Portugal. Historical accounts associated their darker complexion with Moorish ancestry, tying this community to explorers who might have accompanied Europeans on early New World expeditions. But while these theories endured for centuries, scientific advancements eventually challenged them. DNA analysis has proven that the core Melungeon ancestry is primarily European, with contributions from sub-Saharan Africa and smaller elements stemming from Native American populations. Middle Eastern genetic markers, though occasionally present, appear too minor to substantiate claims of widespread Turkish or Moorish ancestry, which we just discussed. These early European theories did, however, serve a critical social function. Architecturally, Melungeon homes often included features that echoed both European and Native American traditions. Cabins and other structures were sometimes designed to blend into the forested surroundings, offering protection from external threats and extreme weather conditions. This blend of conservationist building practices speaks to their deep knowledge of the harsh environment they inhabited. The Melungeons are also known for their traditional crafts, such as quilting and weaving, which were both practical and expressive. These crafts, passed down through generations, often feature patterns and motifs that could potentially trace their origins to various global influences. Interestingly, the Melungeons traded goods like furs and handcrafted items with settlers outside their communities. While this economic activity contributed to their survival, it also exposed them to further scrutiny and forced them to adopt strategies to evade discrimination. Some legends associate the Melungeons with spiritual practices rooted in mysticism or folk magic, often feared or misunderstood by outsiders. Remedies, charms, and rituals were sometimes regarded as superstitions. But for the Melungeons, these practices were deeply practical and tied to survival in their isolated environment. By safeguarding their history and celebrating their contributions, we ensure that the Melungeons' tale, one of survival, continues.